on. We're muted. Hello, everybody. How are we doing there? Today we're here with Corey Miller and Tim Stratton, as promised, this evening on the Truth Conversation. And we are looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to this since we talked about it yesterday. We're also going to have a couple of special guests pop in and out. We'll let them surprise you as it comes. But here we are today talking about basically the state of our nation, worldview, apologetics, and how we think about the world through a biblical lens is so important. So welcome. Corey, Tim, would you guys introduce yourself really quickly?
Go for it, Tim.
Go ahead, Corey.
Corey, go ahead.
So president of Ratio Christi, it's a campus apologetics ministry. We are on over 100 campuses, but we have venues with professors, with high school students. We are overseas, and we are basically trying to bring the intellectual life of Christ to light back on the university campuses, where it's often missing, but it should be present because Christians founded the universities.
Excellent. And Tim, you're the director of Free Thinking Ministries. Is that what it is?
Yeah, founder and director of Free Thinking Ministries. You can find our website at freethinkingministries.com or Freethink Inc. That's freethinkinc.org. Also find us on YouTube. I'm also a professor of theology at Trinity College of the Bible and Theological Seminary. With Free Thinking Ministries, our mission is reasoning together based on Isaiah 1:18 by applying logic and sound theology to all aspects of life. And so I've been trying to apply logic and sound theology to politics lately, and it's caused a lot of it caused me a lot of trouble, I guess.
You've been kind of the controversial figure here lately, haven't you, Tim?
Yeah, I guess.
Do you mind sharing any of the trouble it's caused you or anything?
I can touch on it a little bit.
You've been pretty public on social media with it.
Yeah. No, I the way I see it is, Paul makes it clear that the entire law of Christ can be summed up in one command, and that's to love your neighbor as yourself. And so if we're truly loving our neighbors, we ought to strive to protect our neighbors from evil. And so when you examine the policies advanced by the modern day Democrat machine and from Harris and Walz recently, it seemed clear to me that Christians have a moral obligation to use not just their vote, but their voice to oppose this evil so that we can love and protect our neighbors. And using our voice is so important that Christians with a platform, I think, also have a moral obligation to be loud and aggressive. In fact, Scripture is clear. I've published articles on this. The Scripture is clear that we need to speak out and expose evil. If we're going to be salt and light, we have to, if we're light, we expose evil. If we're salt, we help to slow the decay of society. So we should be doing both of those things. And it really frustrated me that so many pastors and evangelicals were not using their voice. They were just ignoring this. And I challenged even my pastor. I said, hey, if you're going to be a shepherd, you need to defend the sheep from all the wolves, not just some of them, not just most of them, but all of them. And the sheep are being threatened. Your neighbors are being threatened. The least of these are being threatened. And you have a voice, you have a platform, and you're failing to use it. And ultimately, that got me kicked out of the church. So,
wow.
and I lost a lot of money in the process because they were the first supporter of Free Thinking Ministries. I raised funds like a missionary does. And they were one of the biggest supporters of Free Thinking Ministries. And so, I sacrifice truth. So I guess that's why I'm here today. I want to talk about truth and the intersection of theology and politics.
Corey, what are your what's your follow up to that? I mean, it's you think it's I think I know the answer to this question. And like a good, I guess I'm an attorney for Christ. You're a real attorney though. You have your JD. Yeah, I'm only asking a question I know the answer to already. Do you agree with what Dr. Stratton has just shared with us?
Yeah, but I like his necklace too.
Yeah, you'd think he plays music in a band or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. No, I don't have a JD, but I should have a JD. I thought about going on for a JD.
That's right.
Thought about going on for a second PhD in social political philosophy, given the trajectory of where I'm operating at. So, I mean, as president of Ratio Christi, we've had, since I've been here, about 150 legal inquiries, 4 federal victories, 5 appellate court victories, 2 SCOTUS assist, and right now we're in litigation with the Biden administration's Department of Education, and maybe that only will last a few more weeks from here. We will see. But it's constant. I was a professor, and I had to get legal defense for my classroom at Indiana University. I was canceled from one of the oldest universities up in Canada at one of our chapters up there. The university brought me in as a philosopher to give a lecture on something public, and it was going to be, is Christianity good or bad for the world? They thought that was wildly too controversial, and so they made me change the title, which was fine. I changed the title so that only philosophers would understand what it means. It's going to be the same talk, but as soon as one student Googled me and looked at my past, then they canceled me. So, you know, this whole bit of cancel culture, of unfriending or blocking people on social media, the data shows it's typically more happening on the left than on the right. We want to connect, as Tim said, and as this podcast is called, The Truth Conversation. We want to be about the pursuit of truth. That's the ethos of the universities, the pursuit of truth. We want to defend the truth, whatever that truth is. And we want to be able to do what Voltaire, at least his biographer, suggested, and that is we would disagree with what other people say, but we would defend to the death their right to say it, and we ought to be able to debate it, because debate is not hate. But in our current cultural climate, and what's being pushed is speech codes, speech zones, blasphemy laws based upon political truth, political orthodoxy. And so we are living in a current revolution, a social revolution. It's not one with guns and tanks, but it is with ideas, and it is with key institutions that have been captured and need to be recaptured, frankly.
You know, working here at HCU is just such a privilege. I know somebody that would totally agree with what you guys are saying, I think, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think, you know, Jerry Walls may just disagree. I don't think he would disagree with any of this. I don't think so. But instead of speculating, let's find out for ourselves here. Let's see if we can find Jerry Walls. Is Jerry Walls around? Let's see. I've never done this before, so yeah, there he is. There's Jerry. How are we doing, Dr. Walls?
Doing all right, Bill. How are you doing?
Doing good. So what's your perspective on this stuff, Dr. Walls?
Yeah, I think the amazing thing here is the fact that freedom is something that contemporary Christians do not enjoy to the full, and it's really a striking and a tragic thing that Christians do not feel the freedom to forthrightly express their opinions. So it's really interesting that Trump has been underestimated in terms of the vote, and the reason is simply because a lot of people who are supporting him are afraid to admit it. And it's really a sad thing. I mean, I can always remember, past elections, there would be Republicans versus Democrats. There was good-spirited kind of, competition, and everybody was forthright and laughed, and after it was all over, you could hug your brother and the like. But now it's like you have to hide your convictions, and there's something seriously and profoundly wrong with America when you cannot honestly, forthrightly state your convictions. And, that's the thing that I think has made Donald Trump's election for so many people so encouraging, is that, he has your back. And the fact of the matter is a lot of people need someone to have their back. And it's really frightful to think that there's not only pressure and the like, but even fear, that you're going to say something or whatever that's going to run afoul of the powers that be. And that's a sad situation to see in America.
And with that, Jerry, I remember it was last year sometime, the look of disappointment in your face whenever you and I were talking in the hallway one day about almost the I mentioned the fruitlessness of debate, and you seemed to think that debate was still worth having. But as somebody from a millennial perspective, I'm like, almost today, if you think about the political discourse, it's not really even a debate anymore. It's more of a personality contest and shouting match.
Right,
in a sense.
and the loss of reasoned disagreement is a serious kind of a loss. And again, if we come to the place where the only way disagreements can be handled is pressure, writing people off, disenfranchising them, that's a really tragic state of affairs. And if we can't recover collegiality, if we can't recover respect. Now, again, there's sharp differences, and that's part of why, there's so much pressure. But even with these kind of differences, we ought to be able to express them forthrightly, freely, without any fear of reprisal from the powers that be.
Right. And I don't know very many evangelicals. I'm sure Jerry would agree with me on this. I don't know very many evangelicals that think that way. That are just write off people they disagree with. Matter of fact, I think on all of our Facebook pages and social media outlets that there have been a lot of people disagree with us very sharply. I've seen Tim openly apologize when he was wrong. I don't see Corey apologize too much. He's always right. He's my boss. I can't. But no, I do appreciate that about our Christian community, though, is that we are able to disagree with each other and remain charitable and apologize. I actually had an atheist compliment us the other day on that. He said very plainly, "This is what I like about Christians. They like accountability. Like they really they're okay with that, And we." Yeah. You don't see that in a lot of places. Not to grandstand or toot our own horn here. So, what's the way forward at this point, guys? What do you think? Like, is this the end of the country, or is this a fresh beginning? Should we be worried in the next 4 years that we have the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the Oval Office, and everything we do can be absolutely demonized now as what's next? What do you think, Tim?
Well, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And, but I saw Trump made an announcement today about what he was going to do about the transgender madness, as it were. And it looked great. I mean, he said that he wanted to see America have an official definition. That his administration was going to have an official definition of man and woman, and that men were not going to be allowed to compete against women in sports or share their bathrooms and locker rooms and showers. Said that it was not going to be that he wasn't going. On day one, he was going to sign something to stop the mutilation of young children. I mean, he was going all out, and I'm like, okay, well, this is right. This is why we elected you. We want him, and now that he's got the popular vote, I'm so glad he's got the popular vote along with the electoral, because now he's got this perceived mandate that the country is expecting him to do these things, and so I'm hoping that Trump and Vance actually do what they ran on, and if they do, I think it's going to be good. So. The problem will come is if they don't keep their commitments. But I don't know.
Sure.
Corey, what do you think? I think they're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Trump had 4 years, and he kept quite a few of his promises as he was able to keep them, which, like 3 members of the Supreme Court, a lot of people look at that and think, yeah, but then look what happened. He kind of stopped short, changed his views a little bit, and realized that those 3 members of the Supreme Court judge 300 issues, 3,000 days, three decades in a row. I mean, they're taking so much, taking a majority court now for the first time in half a century. That one issue is huge. Trump's putting in judges helped us to win a case in the Ninth Circuit Court that we would not have touched in the last decade. He changed the judiciary. So that has a huge set of ramifications for the future. But I think more broadly, I think a lot of people woke up after Election Day and realized, oh my gosh, finally, sanity, finally rest, finally reprieve. But that's all it is it's a reprieve. You get 24 hours to relax, then you've got to go to work again. Yeah. Because the other side, and I don't want to make this about politics per se, but because politics is downstream from culture, and politics has always been not a science for 2,500 years until the scientific revolution. It's part of ethics. It's at the tip of the iceberg for worldview and philosophy. Politics is downstream from culture. Culture is downstream from education. And at the top of education, the apex is the university. So we've been seeing some pushback from the Bud Light pushback in the corporate world to the Supreme Court weighing in. Again, thank you for the change in the judiciary, for racial hiring or admissions policy hiring at Harvard and UNC, which then scared a lot of people in the corporate world thinking, oh, it might be coming for us next. And some of them, it just gave them boldness to do what they already wanted to do, but they were so scared to do it. And so they start scrapping DEI, which is, a version of Western Marxist ideology in application. But all of that stuff is but a mere pendulum swing. It's temporary. The other side is coming back really hard already. I saw the Secular Student Alliance newsletter today, which is our counterpart on campuses. And in fact, they're the ones that we're in litigation with the Biden administration's Department of Education. No fewer than 3 or 4 times did they lump Christians in with the venture of Trump and a whole future task of creating a theocracy of Christian nationalism. And they're raising donor support based on that notion. Philanthropists have already been coming out reminding us that donations kind of go down the year after an election, but they particularly go down for the side who wins, because the energy level is, well, we won that, we're done, we can rest. The other side starts raising massive support and starts to go into duress mode. And in the universities where we're at, where all this stuff is coming from, we need to keep an eye on this. We just dumped a dump truck of chlorine, perhaps, after a pool party down in the pond at the end of the stream. And we can finally see the bottom of that pond for the first time in years. But you know what? Give it a couple hours, give it a couple weeks, a couple of months, and that pond is going to be filled back up with murky water, because it's what's coming from upstream. And what you're seeing in culture and politics downstream is what was in the university yesterday. What's happening there today will be in the culture tomorrow. And we can talk about what that's going to be. It is not good. We cannot take our ball off this. We had 24 hours of rest. We're done. We need to go to work.
Yep.
That's right.
And to add to that, Corey, I think it's almost as if Francis Schaeffer was a prophet. Like you're seeing his ideas just play out in the culture, the line of despair and things following downhill. It's abundantly clear to everybody outside of the United States that whatever happens in the United States trickles to all over the world, Right. And thanks to Ratio Christi and the work that we're doing overseas, I was given the privilege to be in 8 different countries this summer, technically 12 different countries since last March. And there seems to be one consistent thing they ask for over there. When I give a talk, which I have 40 different talks on my CV that everybody sees if they come ask me to speak about something, ranging from C.S. Lewis to Kalam Cosmological Argument and Science and Faith. And then there's one little talk on LGBT, like how to reach your LGBT neighbor. That's the number one thing that gets asked for. And I
Israel.
always ask why. Like, why is that? And they said, well, it's because the European Union, the United Nations, and especially the United States, the leftist politicians of the United States, enforced this on us. And that's what happened in Kenya in 2023. I mean, when I was there in 2019, nobody cared about LGBT things at all. They didn't even see it coming as a government policy thing. But I don't think it's coincidence at all. And I've said this in front of American audiences, and people always ask, why do you say it that way? Like, I always say the same day that Jill Biden landed in Nairobi, Kenya, they flipped completely on laws that have been in the books on homosexuality for 100 years. And that's a pattern all over the world right now. And so somebody, and I'm bringing this up because one of our comments that came across the YouTube channel says that, we are going to reshape the globe with our three branches of popular mandate, let alone the USA. And we don't ever think about that as Americans. We don't think about, like, not only is what happens here in the United States has a ripple effect all over the world. And it's maybe a little humble that we don't think that way. I mean, we're worried about what happens here, and like we want America to reflect what we've been founded on. But this is an everywhere issue for most people. And actually, I got a text, Corey, today from one of our missionaries in Romania, said that their prayers were answered and they were thankful that Trump won the presidency and things. And people are looking at that saying, like the Kenyans saying, well, we liked Trump because he kept Russia and China off our back. We never hear that here. Right. It's never brought up. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think, like, why is that? It kind of makes me angry. Like, why doesn't he never has gotten credit for the kind of things he's done overseas? It's like he can't do anything right, in some people's eyes. Right. Yeah. This is where we are, though. So how do we move forward? You have any thoughts over there, Jerry? I want just speak up if you do, and I'll just bring you on the screen. So yeah. So what's we're talking about this, but what's next? How can we? So we see the problem in the universities. We see the problem in the culture. What do Christians need to be doing today besides just praying? How can we put our prayers to action?
I appreciate you mentioning that. How can we put them to action? Because in the worst case scenario, I think what God has given us here as Christians is Cyrus the Great. In the best case scenario, he has preserved us from Nero. One of them accommodated God's people in rebuilding the wall. The other one impaled Christians and illuminated their bodies to the roads to Rome. We may not see Trump, may not see the Republican Party as identical to Christianity. That's not at all what any of us Christian thinkers hold about that. Mm-hmm. But it is at least the party. He is the person who was the candidate that is definitely the most friendly to Christian thought in so many different ways. And we have an opportunity now underneath that friendly sphere, and the people that he's bringing in, like an Elon Musk, who I think even his entry, it goes back to what Tim was talking about, this obligation as leaders, as shepherds, or whatever, to defend. What happens when we take our platforms and use them for good is that it gives other people freedom to actually come forth as well. Someone like that took the platform for freedom and stood up is now going to lower the cost of other billionaires, of other people on the fence, to be able to move forward. If we stand silent, all we're going to do is just wait till it's time for them to come and get us. So I love Tim's activism there. I love the question here: what do we do next? Because faith in a Christian context is faithful. Faith works. We need to get to work. And there's a lot of things we can do as Christians and not just depend on what the politicians are doing and hope that they will fulfill their promises down there in Washington.
Sure. I think Jerry was going to say something.
Well, yeah, I was just inclined to say that there's the rare opportunity for people to come forward, to forthrightly organize, to begin ministry to these various places that need it, and may not have an opportunity like this for a long time. But if we make the changes now, take the initiative now, I think this can be more than just a momentary thing. I think a lot of people have seen something more than just a surface, superficial change. I think a lot of people see this as potentially almost revolutionary in a positive way, and I hope that is what a number of people will see and will seize the opportunity to bring back a country where you can just freely talk to each other, to bring back a country where you can be forthrightly Christian without fear. And the more Christians that do this, it can become a force.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing to me. You know what I did yesterday was I front loaded in the morning. I don't know if you guys front load posts on Facebook. That's just how I do. That way I don't have to think about it all day long. And I have enough people following. I want to just bring truth, grace, positivity into people's lives, rebukes, whatever we need that day. Whatever's on my heart. So I front loaded about, 10 or 12, 15 maybe campaign promises, just as one sentence statements. I don't know if you guys saw any of those on my Facebook wall. Some of them made it to Threads and other places too. And I was really surprised at how some people reacted in the sense that I was just rubbing it in their face, and things. I'm like, no, these were just one sentence statements. And I wasn't trying to gloat it, but that's where we are. It's like we can't even handle a campaign promise without getting angry. And it's like the social imaginative that Carl Trueman writes about in The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. Like, that's what it reminded me of. We have such a therapeutic way of looking at life now that if what you say makes me feel bad, you are my enemy. Like, you have hurt me deeply. How do we navigate that? And this goes right along with one of our friends here, Julian Gentry, bringing on the broadcast. He said, got any advice with speaking with fellow Christians who hate Trump and vote Democrat? I think we all have those. Like, what advice would you guys give?
Well, I co-authored a 10,000 word open letter. People can find it on our website, freethinkingministries.com, and it's called An Open Letter to My Never Trump Friends, or something like that. And we really tried to answer that question for these people. It was starting a dialogue with our Christian friends who just can't bring themselves to, or who could not bring themselves to cast a vote for Trump in this last election. Thankfully, had many people tell us that article did help them, and they saw that this is, policies, voting against policies that are going to have a direct impact, a horrible impact upon their neighbors, is much more important. That Jesus called it the greater matters of the law when he was, condemning the Pharisees. He said, woe to you, hypocrites and blind guides, you failed to consider the greater matters of the law. And I think obviously the greatest matters of the law is loving God and loving your neighbors. And if, one thing that I pointed out is if you do nothing, I pointed to Bonhoeffer and the 12,000 silent pastors, Bonhoeffer versus the 12,000 silent pastors during the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany. And, I pointed to people like, look, these guys had a huge platform with, they could influence so many people in Germany, yet they were silent. They were scared. They were silent. They did not use their voices. They did not use their platforms to influence Germany. And because of that, we saw what happened. That led to the Holocaust and much worse. And so showing people that we can't be we can't be silent like they were. Whether you're a pastor with a big influence or just somebody with a Facebook account, I tell people to use their platform to try to influence people in such a way that it benefits and protects their neighbor. So comparing policies to platforms, or policies to character, I think is vital here. And always keeping your neighbors in mind. What is best for your neighbor here? We can all agree that Donald Trump has done some things that aren't good personally. He's got some big personal sins. So do I, right? Paul, the Apostle Paul, said he was the chief of sinners. God used him in an amazing way. David, King David, was a horrible sinner. God used him in an amazing way. Samson was, he didn't always have good character, right? God used him in an amazing way. And so we can see how God has, I think, used people with questionable character in the past, but I think Donald Trump is in the same kind of category here. His policies work to suppress the evil that threatens our neighbors, that threatens our neighbors, and the least of these. And I think voting for him was the right thing to do in this past election. Now, the people who didn't, I had some strong words for them. Because I didn't think, I thought this was an objectively, I thought, it got us into objective morality here. Because the greatest of all the commands is to love our neighbors. And when we just don't do anything, when we're silent in the face of evil and don't do anything, that allows evil to attack our neighbors. Now, I know I hurt a lot of people's feelings over that. So now the challenge is, hey, let's reconcile. We need each other. I wrote another article, co-authored it with Josh Klein, and it was called A Moral Obligation to Vote for an Immoral Candidate. And, and I said, no matter what happens at the end of this, we're going to need each other. So the body of Christ, we need to reconcile, and we need to work together on this. But as Corey said, we're just getting started now, and I'm not going to stop speaking truth just because we won the election. Are going to continue to expose evil, and we have to fight against it. We have to pray against it, but we hear from atheists all the time, oh, your thoughts and prayers are with us. Thoughts and prayers are with us. Thanks a lot. Well, where's your action? Well, I'm going to agree with them. We better have our thoughts and prayers, but where we have the power to act, we better act. And when we have a platform to use our voice, we better use it, and you better speak up, and you better be loud about it too. We need to warn people of evil, expose evil, and oppose evil.
The fundamental problem with all of that, though, Tim, is this. You said we're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. The way that you define love is going to be crucial. And that's the hard part.
Niceness. It should not be equated with niceness.
Yeah. Now, love is sacrificial, and love speaks the truth. And that's our understanding of love. But now you have another understanding of love that says if you don't accept the way I live and advocate for the things that I care about, you must hate me. As one of our viewers posted on the Facebook page that, they've had family members and friends delete them. Matter of fact, I've had 20, I think I'm up to, what did we count earlier, guys? Like 21 people, I think, so far delete me off Facebook. I've noticed since yesterday. I've been tracking it. It's like, wow. Okay, so like how we define love is going to be crucial going forward.
Well, for Christians, we just need to act biblically and understand what love is and what love does just by reading Scripture. We know what it does. And, Jesus was the perfect epitome of love. Love is grounded in his nature, actually. And he wasn't always nice. So we know that love should not be equated with niceness. Jesus was extremely harsh with religious people who should have known better. And Paul, speaking to fellow Christians, just look at how he spoke to the Galatians, right? It's when he was speaking to Christians who ought to know better, he kind of changes his tune. Where elsewhere we see him being full of grace and patience and niceness to non-believers, but when speaking to fellow Christians, he got pretty harsh. And obviously Jesus did too. He called Peter Satan. Get behind me, Satan. Yeah, we just need to look at Scripture to see what love does. I've used, I'll make this quick. If my son was driving our car, and he was headed toward a cliff, and the cliff was in a few miles, I might at first say, "Hey, did you see that sign that said the bridge was out? You're going to drive off the cliff." And he's like, "Oh, I didn't see the cliff. I'm not worried about that." We go another couple miles forward. I'm like, "Hey, did you see that sign?" He goes, "Yeah, I saw that sign, but I don't think nothing that bad could ever happen." All right, now if we're like a mile away and he's stepping on the gas, I'm not going to be so worried about hurting his feelings at that point, because my wife's in the back seat too, and I love my son more than anything. I'm going to be pretty harsh with him because I love him. I don't want him to drive off a cliff. So I think I think we were in a similar situation with this election. I thought we were close to driving off a cliff, and thankfully, I don't think we did. I think we stopped that.
Yeah, I think Tim's right on that. We need to think about most of the political conversations, since politics is part of ethics. It's not like two people's disagreement over the structure of the atom, which most people just don't care about. Politics
Right.
and ethics and religion, those are the things you are told not to talk about around a dinner table because they will, ruffle people's feathers. But there has to be a way to do it. Every lecture. Are we still here?
Yeah, we're here.
I can hear you.
Every lecture that I did at Indiana University in an ethics class, I don't care what the topic is, they are all controversial. And yet there has to be a way that we can discuss things and try to generate more light than heat, even acknowledging the fact that the last time you touched the light bulb, it was hot. So these are all going to be hot topics, especially when you get into in politics and religion and ethics. But there's got to be a way that we treat people with dignity as humans made in God's image, and that as Christians, even if we feel like we are right, and we might be, there's a time and a place for harsh words, but there is also a general tone and a general character in caring for other people. And to Tim's end, you can tell the truth without love, but you cannot love someone without telling the truth. Love is love
Amen.
is a pithy aphorism that is meaningless in our culture, just like water is water, whether it comes from the tap or the toilet. Love literally means willing the good of the other person, not emoting the good, but willing the good. And I want to take us back though to what we were discussing a little bit earlier in terms of the ideas, because politics and ethics are the tip of the iceberg. It's what people get all upset about around election time, more so than any other time. But it is not the tip that sunk the Titanic. It's the worldview below that. Ideas have consequences, and as John Stonestreet likes to say, bad ones have victims. And so, this what we're seeing right now. It's going to calm down. It's going to rise back. Political allies, and I mean that broadly, from Rogan to Musk, from RFK to Tulsi Gabbard, from Peter Boghossian to Alliance Defending Freedom, and to prayers for revival, which almost always are connected to the campus, to college campuses. It's all hands on deck. It's the university, stupid. I'm writing a book right now. Its final edits are due to the publisher next Friday. It'll come out next year, but it is titled The Third Revolution: From the Campus to the Culture and a Vision Forward. I'm not trying to pump the book right now, but the ideas. You might not be called to a university where all the action is currently at, moving from the campus to the culture. And as goes the U.S. university, so goes the world culture as well, as you pointed out, Bill. You may not be called to a campus. Not everybody is, and that's fine. But everybody needs to recognize where all this poison from upstream is coming from. You need to prepare your parishioners for this if you're a pastor or a clergyman. You need to prepare your kids for this, because you can't escape this stuff. It's coming into the churches. It's coming into your homes. There is nowhere to escape from it. you have to prepare for the poison that's coming downstream to you. And moreover, we need to be launching movements going back upstream to change this from the top down. The chlorine in the bottom of the stream right now, it's going to last a couple of weeks, a couple of months, maybe a couple of years. But it's upstream that we need to be concerned about. And all of us can and should be doing something about that, thinking about the ideas that have consequences. We all need to be engaged in Christian apologetics, in worldview, and thinking about institutional recapture. If you're a donor, if you're a philanthropist, what organizations are going to give the most bang for the buck? We think, of course, Ratio Christi is at the campus. There are many like that, but anyone that's engaged at the deeper levels of that thing that sunk the Titanic, we need to be investing in that. The other side is they have taken over the high ground, taking those academic venues. And if you see the voting exit polls, the people that are moving more progressive, more godless, are those that are coming from the universities. And as the society becomes more godless, there's going to be less God, and you're going to see the implications downstream. The voting shows that, and that's what we know simply by the notion that ideas have consequences.
Yeah,
I agree. I couldn't agree more. It's pretty sad that when, we just started our first East African group, Ratio Christi group in Nairobi, and they said, as a mission field, we're going to reach out to, what's it called? USAIU. I was like, oh, what's that stand for? He said, Aseko, one of our leaders over there, said, well, that's United States of America International University. It's pretty much the most liberal, crazy college in all of East Africa. That's where all the bad ideas are coming from. It's like, isn't that crazy that we're attached to that? Like, it has to be called USAIU? He said, well, yeah, it was started by Americans. It's like, that people don't even think like that. We don't even know like what's going on. Like, I don't think in that realm that the amount of impact, this is not an internal, I get America first and all that, and we have to seal our borders, and especially here in Texas. I mean, we know that. We feel the pressure. I'm 5.5 hours from the border, here. And, and that's fine. I'm not against immigration and things like that. But, this is not just an American issue. There's people from around the world, that think it's crazy that we don't have sealed borders. Like, how could you not have that? Are you serious? Like, why would you not have that? And, here in Houston, which was at one point, I think, a sanctuary city, we might still be. We were just joking about this in the break room out here a minute ago, that when I asked where somebody's from, one of my students, we have Colombian students, El Salvadorian students. We have students from all over the world here because it's such a multi-ethnic area. One of the things I ask them is like, oh, cool. And because they'll describe themselves as Colombian or Salvadorian or something. I was like, oh, were you born in the U.S. or were you born overseas? That's almost the second question I have to ask these students. And when you talk to their parents and when you talk in churches in the Houston area and stuff, the most pro like seal the border, get this immigration thing under control are the people from overseas. That's always astonishing to me. And I think that's what we saw in this wave. I think that's what we saw is like there's a lot of people, or like I visit because Ratio Christi, we try to make alliances with people on campuses and stuff. And so sometimes I'll visit other student orgs on campus. So I went to the Young Conservatives Foundation meeting the other day, and a lot of the students in there, almost half the room was African American. I was shocked at that. And they were the loudest voices. Like, they were tired. Matter of fact, the kid that spoke that day was an African American student for Trump. And it's like there is a lot of that going on right now. And I think the general sentiment is like, why did this happen? Why did we see this big red wave? I think the American public's just tired of it all.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think
Christian or not, it's not a Christian issue. I think the American public is just tired of it.
Mm-hmm. No, it was being shoved down our throats, this leftist agenda. It was just too extreme for the majority of Americans. And in fact, I just saw a poll just a couple hours ago that showed that almost every people group that, the left loves to dissect everything into different people groups. But if you do that, you'll see that almost every people group grew in opposition to what the Democrat machine was advancing recently. And so Trump did better in all of these people groups. What I saw was there was only one people group that actually, where Harrison Walls actually outperformed where they did last time. And that was, surprise, surprise, white, educated atheists. In that little group, they outperformed. And what I've seen is every other group. What was that?
I said, coming from the universities.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, that I don't think that's at all surprising. I think that's a trend that we've seen. The most vehement supporters of Black Lives Matter were a lot of them were white folks. They weren't black. And when I watched Matt Walsh's documentary on the Am I Racist thing, I'm sure that just triggered somebody out there. It seemed like the people in that of course, that's going to come from one perspective. Like, I get that. I concede that. But I see this over and over and over again, especially when he talked to the guy down south from Ghana, I think it was. So we have a student from Ghana right now. And it was almost exactly the same, how he talked and how my student talks. My student from Ghana was a avid Trump supporter because they're like, he really seems like one side of the aisle is using me. And I've heard this from homosexuals too. I had this conversation not too long ago with an outspokenly gay friend of mine. They're like, I'm just so sick of my lifestyle, my skin color or whatever, just being used as an agenda item. I'm really tired of that. Like, this is not the attention I want to bring on myself. And I've talked about this a lot with people in the last few days. Who's going to be the next presidential nominee for the Democratic Party? I mean, I think right now it might be AOC, unless, which it could be. We could see an AOC Walls elected. I said that yesterday on the podcast too. But I think what we might see is a change of ideological platforms in the Democratic Party. I think they're going to have to concede that what the rhetoric that they're throwing out there right now is just not sticking. And I'm encouraged to that, because it's been so radical and so crazy. Yeah. People overseas are shocked when I show that picture of like drag queen story hour. Anyway, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. It seems to me that.
Oh, sorry. Hold on a minute. Corey, give Tim. Go ahead, Tim. You've been interrupted twice, buddy, and then we'll go to Corey.
Oh no, Pennsylvania might be the top contender for the next wave of the presidential nominee for the Democrat Party. That's who I would pick if I were a Democrat.
Who was that? I'm sorry, you broke up there just for a second for some reason.
Oh, Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah. Another one would be like Andy Beshear from Kentucky. Somebody that's more in the moderate realm. But that's obviously not what they're looking for right now. Like it's and I think it hurt them. Corey.
Oh, definitely.
Corey, what were you going to say?
Yeah. So much of a backlash is happening because we've had the opportunity now to compare it to something, to compare Christianity to something, to compare Christian values to something, so that you get people as far as Tom Holland and Richard Dawkins and Elon Musk calling themselves cultural Christians, or Jordan Peterson, an existentialist Christian. People having buyer's remorse or a little bit of lament that they destroyed something, and now they kind of want at least part of it back. They want the fruit, if not the root of Christianity back, because they realize that we actually had it quite good with that, and they want to reverse a little bit, or at least get rid of some of this bad stuff. I think of what Peter Boghossian said probably about 6 weeks ago. on Twitter. He said, and he was someone, just for context for audience, someone who was our ideological enemy, wrote the book, A Manual for Creating Atheists. But he and I went on tour at several universities together, and then we just kind of followed each other in certain ways since then. But on Twitter, he said about 6 weeks ago, so many of my friends who are liberal and moderate are whispering to me the unthinkable. I will be voting for Donald Trump. Now, that was thinking amazing. I don't think a lot of people fully understand the gravity, the level of what kind of revolution we're in here right now. So that we don't appear to be just defending, say, the Republican Party or Trump per se, and just, cashing out completely on the Democratic Party. Those two parties have changed markedly in the last decade.
Oh, yeah.
Such that you're seeing people like Joe Rogan, who wouldn't even have a conservative Christian thinker on his podcast for the first 2,000 episodes until Stephen Meyer. Wow. And then he endorsed Trump. You're talking about Peter Boghossian making that statement. You're seeing two former recent Democrat presidential candidates that not only left the Democratic Party, but started actively campaigning for Trump. You're talking about Gloria Romero, who was the majority person of the Senate of the state of California, started campaigning for Trump. You're talking about Elon Musk, who just last presidential cycle voted for Biden. Before that, voted for Obama. You're looking at a Republican Party that has broadened its tent, that has given sort of acquiesced on, at least on the public face of it, to issues on the platform, like a more personal view of abortion and homosexuality, but then has added other social moral issues like anti-CRT, anti-Marxism, anti-insanity of, boys pretending to be girls in women's sports and things like that. But what you're doing is you're seeing the broadening of this tent that seems to include yesterday's Democrat and today's more moderate Republican. What it does for Christians, historically, Christians have for decades voted in the broadest numbers for the Republican Party, not because they identify the Republican Party as the Christian Party. And the atheists have voted in broad numbers for the Democratic Party, not because it per se is the atheist party. But both of them recognize that one party facilitates the worldview better than the other party. And what we're seeing right now is you're seeing this cultural revolution that has been taking place from academia, moving down quickly to media, to the political world, and even to ecclesia, into the churches and campus ministries and the seminaries and so forth. A Marxist revolution that has largely been dominated in the Democratic Party by members like AOC, who is a Marxist. And so you're not looking at today's Democratic Party as the 90s Democrat. Bring back Bill Clinton's, by comparison. It's not the same party. They even had a balanced budget amendment in their 90s platform. You're looking at a Republican Party that we may have even a smaller share of the slice of the pie now, because that party has now grown to embrace a whole lot of Democrats and non-Christians, so that we still have a seat at the table to be salt and light, as Tim spoke of earlier. It might be smaller because of the broader people that have come in, but ironically, what we've seen is those Christians who have been influenced either by sheer antipathy of the personality or personal life of Donald Trump, or progressive Christians or never Trumpers who may have been even conservative Christians, they've actually moved into the other side. And I think to their detriment, to everybody's detriment, because the other side has backfilled its loss of population somewhere. And I think that's where it's getting those people. I don't know what you guys think about that.
It's astonishing to me. And it's like, to back up what you were saying here, this is my buddy Alex. She's one of our former Ratio Christi students here at HCU. Pretty frequent viewer of our channel. So people are just tired of the woke nonsense. Many moderates and liberals voted right, and that backs it up. It's amazing. Like I don't know why it's amazing. Gen Z's a lot. Working with Gen Z, I don't know about you guys. I found out they're a whole lot smarter than what people give them credit for quite often. And as a matter of fact, we do have a Gen Z representative here with us today. Let me see if I can get this going again. My buddy Braden's sitting in the room, and he actually represents a demographic that helped Trump get into office. The boy actually drove 8.5 hours one way just to go cast his vote in Texas here. And that is that, and maybe longer than that. I don't know, however far Odessa is, but and then he actually worked for the dreaded Heritage Foundation too, which is why we have the Project 2025 book sitting over his shoulder here. And as all this stuff was unfolding, just to give a little bit of background, I'm like, you heard of this Project 2025? And Braden's like, kind of like, Bill, you idiot. Like, Bill, I worked for the Heritage Foundation this summer. And so Braden, I wanted to make sure we got to your perspective. Dr. Walls had to leave, so we brought in our second guest today. Like, let's hear it from somebody who's actually living in this moment. That was part of our, part of this whole shift. So why is your generation drifting right now?
That's a good question. If I'm being completely honest, I can really only answer why I'm drifting right. I think a lot of my generation is seeing how a lot of the mainstream media, by that I mean Fox News, CNN, it's always been very polar and getting a water hose shoved down your throat with just a single perspective. I'm tired of the one-way indoctrination, I think. A lot of them are. And people are starting to open their eyes to a lot of the lies. Abortion is actually not empowerment. You go get an abortion and you actually feel like something's missing rather than something was given to you. Or conservative economic policies actually giving you a lot more autonomy and freedom of what to do with your own dollar, and your dollar goes longer. I think that my generation is seeing a lot more of that. But at the same time, my generation is also the heavily targeted demographic for left-wing ideology. And they're the ones that I see suffering the most. Just yesterday, I was scrolling through the X threads of the meltdowns surrounding Trump winning, and I think all but one video that I saw were of women crying because now they're afraid that they can't go get their abortion, and it just broke my heart to see, because it shows just how deep it goes and how much they've been lied to, that something that's so horrible is actually going to give them more freedom.
It's interesting to see that the youth vote, just to see how Trump gained among the youth. That was so encouraging to me a couple of days ago to see that. Have you guys seen those polls that the youth vote?
I have not.
I can't remember how it officially broke down, but it showed that Trump really gained among the youth vote, and we've been losing them for so long. So it's good to see him coming around this time. What did you think about that?
I did see where, I think it was, I can't remember the news outlet. I listened to several in the morning during my routine, several news briefings, and they were saying that Charlie Kirk was doing rallies on these college campuses, and they said it was interesting to watch how the rallies began with boos and screaming and people just actively opposing him, to this semester in the fall, the students cheering for him. They were uplifting, even sometimes, people praying and stuff like that. I was like, well, I'll be honest, I haven't paid a lot of attention to Charlie Kirk. He's I'm obviously going to have to start paying a lot more attention to some of these people, because some of these people have really made a difference, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you see, Corey? You work at Purdue University? Indiana was,
Yeah.
yeah, like Indiana was one of the first states to go red next to Kentucky. So,
but I will say, back in 2008, Indiana voted for Obama, and again in 2012. So it's shifted back to a red state. But the way that Obama did it, I remember being on campus. He came to Purdue like 3 different times. He went to Indiana University about 3 times. He went up to Notre Dame, Indiana, and they signed up several thousand at each one of those campuses. And Indiana broke for Obama by 20,000 votes that year. Yeah. And what was happening this year, and we've got several of our colleagues at universities on staff, on faculty, telling us about this. Their students were all getting emails from the Democratic Party. Now, either that's because the universities themselves broke FERPA laws and had agreements with the Harris campaign, or there was some out that they were doing, but in order to do it legally. But I think Republican legislators need to be looking at this. Republican-led or free-thinking, neutral attorneys need to be looking at this and looking at it at the universities, because they're going after the college campuses for a reason. Out of the campus comes our doctors, our lawyers, our journalists, our K through 12 educators, and so they try to go after the campuses. And Tim's right. This generation broke a little bit more for Trump than people were thinking was going to happen, and that's because of how bad the culture has gotten. But it was still majority that went for Harris, and it'll continue to be, because where are they getting their education from, right? I mean, the media itself. I think Braden brought up Twitter. I was looking at the big 3 like ABC, CBS, NBC, and there was a 3-month coverage on how well they covered Trump versus Harris. And Harris got almost 80% positive coverage on the big 3 media. So if you're an elderly person and that's what you're listening to, NBC, CBS, ABC, that's what you saw. Well, Trump didn't get 80%. He got 85% negative coverage from those. I mean, that is obviously not journalism. And had Musk not taken back Twitter, you wouldn't have had, I wonder if anyone would have been informed like we were today. So the media is very important to be having an influence over. But our young people that are going through K through 12, whose teachers just got educated in the universities, and the College of Education across the United States is absolutely target number 1 by critical theorists and cultural Marxists to influence the K through 12 educators, because by the time they get to the universities, they're already primed for it. And now they're taught to be very smart because all the PhDs are saying X, Y, and Z. And so it is no surprise that our culture is secularizing so quickly. It's so radical and so rapid because of what's coming from the universities. So I think one of the things that I've been keeping my eye on recently, and that other people listening to this can do from wherever they're at, is contacting your congressman. I intend on keeping the Trump administration accountable and the congressman in my state by putting an automated email that I will send out once a month about paying off the federal debt. But in terms of the universities, in Indiana here, we just passed a viewpoint diversity law that the moderate governor signed into law. And now we're working together with professors and with students, colleagues in the universities and so forth, to make sure that anyone who is not advocating for viewpoint diversity, not just skin color and body part diversity, but if you want to keep or gain tenure, you cannot be a radical anymore. Now, all red states can legislate like this. The blue states probably won't, but the red states can, and we can have an influence by lessening the negativity, lessening the evil that's coming out of the universities that is anti-Christian. And we need to be coming up with game plans that send more people, like all of us here, are engaged to some degree with university apologetics and evangelism, doing it in the church, warning them about the universities and so forth. But we need to be focused at least a little bit on that topic.
Corey, do you think that could backfire, though? If you're talking about, like, well, radicals can't get tenure, then what if these other states start saying, well, Christians are radicals? And so it depends on how you define radical.
Yeah, you got to look at the policies. So Florida and Texas tried it. They got a little bit too over the top, and they found themselves caught up in the courts. Indiana did it with the influence of DeSantis coming into town and educating them. And my friend that did it is actually a graduate from BYU, Mormon, but he was Mitch Daniels' right-hand man, and he's the guy who spearheaded that whole thing. And now I was talking with John Kyle, Senator of Arizona, last week. I'm going to be continuing the conversation there, but it doesn't take someone at my level that's making these connections. Anyone can do this. It wasn't because I was president of an organization. It's because I started networking, finding out who people were, and contacting congressmen and then trying to set up meetings with them. The viewpoint diversity, the SB 202 is the law that the supermajority passed by almost unanimous consent in Indiana. It makes accommodation for that. You don't have to be talking about something outside of your discipline. And if there are 9 views to the theory of the atom, you don't have to give all 9 views. But if you're giving some radical viewpoints on critical theory, critical gender theory, critical race theory, critical pedagogy, and you're a professor of mathematics, students can call the 1-800 number on that. Professors can call on that. The departments have to report on that. And so it would be designed to keep out a Christian that's doing the same thing too. So it's designed really to, put a shot off the bow. If you want to maintain or gain tenure, you need to make sure that in your syllabus, you're not just putting, body part and skin pigment diversity. You actually need to do the most important kind of diversity in the university, in the pursuit of truth, and that's offer various viewpoints on controversial topics. Make sure you're focused on what you are designed and hired to teach. But if it comes across and your students feel censored, if professors feel they have to self-censor, anyone can report this to the State House and have it looked into. And you can be anonymous.
Okay.
Wow.
It'd be good. We said we would do this for an hour. It's now we're past that. I put in the interview chat. Do you guys how much longer do we want to go? I don't think you guys have been able to see it, but yeah.
Oh yeah, I see it now.
I see five for me.
I need to wrap up here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Want to give Braden another opportunity to chime in here, and any thoughts you want me?
What do you want me to talk about?
Oh, I don't know. Whatever, anything on your mind. You're hearing about university policies and things. I mean, I can. You don't have to, but I can.
I mean, I have nothing to add to the university policies.
Okay. We go to a pretty good school here. It's hard to complain too much about HCU. We don't have to worry. You have to have but go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, with the indoctrination of the youth at universities, it's that's just why Ratio Christi is playing such a huge role right now. Why Ratio Christi is such an important, vital organization to be active in the campus life these days. So I just want to thank both of you, Bill and Corey, for doing what you're doing. I'm honored to play a small little role in this whole thing. And Corey, I mean, if it wasn't for what you're doing and standing up to these bullies, I think we'd be in a much different situation now. So thank you for doing that. And it's Ratio Christi is really focused on apologetics, but when you show that God exists and that Christianity is true, well, now you see that anybody that's dealing with the moral argument. And well, now you see how morality comes from that, and we see how Christian ethics is objective moral values, and then that has an impact on our policies and politics. So it does stream, I think you mentioned earlier, Corey, it streams down from, as it should, from the existence of God and the truth of Christianity. It does have an impact. If Christianity is true, then there is an objective ought to how we live. And that is always going to play a role in political matters. And I like what you said. I think Corey, you said that, the Republican Party facilitates Christianity. The Republican Party is not the Christian party, but it facilitates Christianity much more than the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party often finds itself opposing Christian values. And so, I say, look, I'm not a Christian nationalist, but because I'm a Christian, I'm an American nationalist. And, I cash that out by going back to our philosophical and theological foundations in the Declaration. We see that we get everybody in America loves these objective and unalienable rights. Well, where do we get these rights? According to our foundations, it's from God. And that's exactly right. Our founders didn't get everything right, but they got maybe the most important thing exactly right. And so I say that's what we ought to be arguing for as American nationalists. It allows us as Christians. I would say Christianity makes the most sense of America's theological and philosophical foundations. And so I say, because I'm a Christian, I'm also an American nationalist. But with that said, I do need to wrap up, and I'll give you guys the rest of the time. But Bill, thanks for having me here. And Corey, thanks for all the work you're doing. I'm honored to know you. Both of you guys have encouraged me while I've been in recent struggles and being canceled by my own church. I just want to thank you guys for how you've been there for me, and keep sharpening me like iron.
Thank you, Tim. You've been one of the voices of reason for us. The last little bit, I agree. I agree with what Tim was saying. Ratio Christi was kind of full circle for me, because I actually worked on the Obama campaign in 2008, and it was on college campuses where my worldview was informed. And if it was not for apologetics and taking the Bible seriously, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I gave a talk just a couple of weeks ago at our Ratio Christi Club meeting about how our faith should inform the way that we view our politics, and we ought to be honest about that. I mean, because not everything the Republican platform advocates for can be tied to the Christian faith, and we ought to hold people accountable to that, like as a voice. Don't have time to go into all that. Maybe that's another podcast, but but I think that our faith should inform. I mean, if we take our faith serious enough, our world, it should shape the way we think, and then how we think is how we interact with the culture, and part of our culture just so happens to be voting for elected officials. So you have to deal with that. I mean, it just logically deduces to that. And it's sad that we have a generation now who care about they actually care who's in office. But what I'm noticing about the college students that I minister to is a lot of them don't really want to talk about politics, because they don't really want to get into they either feel like there's too much to know about it and they're just ill-informed and can't even talk about it, or they just don't want to fight and argue. And isn't that sad that, like, the kids that we're raising up right now, I hate to call them kids, but you guys
they feel very overwhelmed.
Yeah, they feel very overwhelmed, exactly how Braden put it. So, yeah, and it goes, we didn't say this, but it goes without saying too that I've heard this from a lot of the girls in our club, that and across college campuses, a lot of different college campuses, not just at HCU, but here we have supposedly the most misogynist president, like toxic masculinity to the max guy, supposedly, that has defeated both of we've had 2 female presidential candidates in our history, and he's defeated both of them. And what kind of message does that send to our young women? It's like, where are the strong females in political leadership? There's a lot of those questions we just don't have time to cover right now, but that's where Gen Z's mind is. They're actually thinking about this on a different plane than we are, So yeah, I'm thankful for it, and I'm thankful for this conversation. Corey, you got any closing remarks? And we'll have to shut her down, man.
Go team, go God. I think this is all hands on deck. We've been given a reprieve. Like I said, at the worst case scenario, God has given us Cyrus the Great. In the best case scenario, he has spared us from Nero. This is a time, it's an opportunity for us to rebuild the wall, so to speak. We need to get to work. We've got a lot to do. The bottom line is, it needs to be about the gospel. Jesus changes lives. Jesus changes cultures. But I think we need to also focus on the strategy of impacting certain institutions that have more bang for their buck. And one of those is the university. So I appreciate everybody here, because everybody in this call has some engagement at that level, thinking about what's coming out of the university and how to influence the universities.
That's right. Well, guys, thank you very much. We'll close down the interview portion, and I'll let you have your night with your families. Thank you for giving up your time. One thing I appreciate about both these guys is, they're both like, well, I'm busy, but this is important. So appreciate you very much. Bye, Corey. Corey just left us. See you, brother. So that said, thank you guys for. Oh no, I've lost my camera as well. Hold on just a minute. There we go. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. I hope this has been informative. I hope this has fostered some thoughts. I really, really hope that some of our viewers today have been people that are not of the conservative political persuasion and are seeking to understand us better as we're seeking to understand you better. And I want to shout out to all of my friends that are on the left that have actually reached out to me today and have encouraged me to keep speaking truth from my perspective. I understand what they mean by that, and keep fostering good dialogue and keep being thoughtful and all of that. And I just want to say how much I appreciate that, and how much we need more of that in the United States. Thoughtful, constructive dialogue. So if you guys got nothing else out of this, I hope that you got that. So
hey, Bill.
Yeah, and that said, I'm going to turn it over to Braden just from. You want to say something, bro?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain what Project 2025 is for.
Oh, you want to explain 2020? That's fine. Let me see if I can figure out how to get you back on here really quick. So you should be right here. Nope. Hold on just a minute. Whoops. We'll have to do it like this right here. There we go. Maybe. Hold on just a minute. There you are, Braden.
Awesome.
There you go. Talk to us, buddy.
Yeah, so right here behind me is the Mandate for Leadership for 2025. This is what the left has been talking about a lot with Project 2025. It's a product of the Heritage Foundation, which is the nation's largest conservative think tank. And there's two parts to Project 2025. There's the first part, which is the mandate. It's a collection of white papers, policy positions, proposed legislation. That's the first part, and they've actually published a mandate every presidential election cycle since 1980, when they first offered it to President Ronald Reagan, who actually accepted it, implemented 60% of the policies from within in his administration. He actually had a copy of the 1980 mandate on every chair the first day that his cabinet met. And the now second part to Project 2025 is a staffing database. And they created this staffing database because the first Trump administration, a big struggle was Donald Trump comes in, he's never worked in politics before, doesn't know anybody, and he hired a lot of the wrong people. A lot of his people then turned around and stabbed him in the back. It was kind of a little bit of a lame duck for a bit. There was nothing really happening. It took a minute to get the ball rolling down the hill. And so Heritage has added this staffing database. There are tens of thousands of applicants within it. And there have been a lot of lies told about Project 2025. The media has tried to brand it as Trump's Project 2025. It's not. There are former Trump staffers, such as Dr. Ben Carson, I believe Robert Greenway, have written portions of the Mandate for Leadership. They've worked on it. Former Trump staffers have worked on it, but it has nothing to do with Trump's campaign itself. The Heritage Foundation has actually offered copies of the Mandate for Leadership, not just to President Trump, but to President Biden, now Vice President Harris's campaign, as well as having offered it to Robert F. Kennedy's campaign. And there have been lies told about what is within Project 2025, such as, Project 2025 wants to take away IVF. Well, IVF is not mentioned once in the mandate. And other lies, you can actually find Heritage addressed it if you just search up 2025truth.org. They address all of the lies, some of which aren't lies. One thing that the left is talking about is Project 2025 wants to dismantle the Department of Education. That's very true. That's actually something that Ronald Reagan campaigned on. Hope that makes sense. That's Project 2025. That's my soapbox moment.
I really think Braden's, if you guys don't know, like, he's sitting in a chair like over here beside me, so I'm turning around to talk to him. But I think Braden, a lot of this has been just talking points. They wanted to use Project 2025 as a talking point, and I think, and this is one of those things that as a conservative I will stand behind. It's one of those political hills I would die on, is defunding the American educational system.
Yeah,
because it's like Reagan said. What business does a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. have? How could they even know? I think's how he put it. How could they even know what a child in Appalachia needs, educationally speaking? And that's where I come from too. I mean, quite literally, I'm from Appalachia, and it's what does somebody in D.C. have to tell us about? And here's the thing that makes sense about this to me, is that what you do is you're defederalizing the educational system, okay? So you defederalize that, which means you take it out of the hands of Washington, D.C., and it's not like that's the end of education, okay? That's the thing people don't seem to realize. It's like, we're going to just not educate our children? No, that's not what that means. That means it's a small government philosophy that says we are returning the power back to the local school boards. Well, that makes sense, because the local school boards are elected as community leaders to steer the education of our students. So the downside to that would be, well, maybe if you live in a very, very, very blue county, your local school boards may dictate that your child is going to get LGBT education and things like that, and you may not want that. On the other side of that same kind of education cannot be enforced throughout the entire United States. So then if you're in a very conservative county, you'll have the option to elect school board officials that will not advocate for this stuff. So it returns the minimal amount of government, maximum amount of government power to the people, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. And so as I was understanding with the conversations that Braden and I have been having about this, it's like, so this is not some wicked evil thing, but what it's going to do is what we've seen in this country for decades upon decades upon decades is the Marxization, as it says in one of the books over there, of American education. And
it's actually going to restore checks and balances as well.
Yeah,
as we dismantle this bureaucracy.
Yeah. Explain exactly what you mean by that, Brad.
Yeah, so the we can take this back to the Chevron deference decision that the Supreme Court overturned over the summer. The Supreme Court, when was it? Do you remember the Chevron deference? So in the 20th century, the Supreme Court had ruled that the government organizations underneath the executive branch, so the ATF, the DEA, the Department of Education, they could create their own laws, which actually subverts the checks and balances because only Congress can create laws, and it's the president's job to enforce the laws. It's the executive branch's job to enforce the laws, not to create the laws. And that's what bureaucracy is. Bureaucracy is regulation. And by getting rid of the Department of Education, Elon Musk's plan to come in and dismantle the bureaucracy, tear down all of these hundreds and hundreds of government organizations, bureaucratic organizations that we have, what that's going to do is that's going to deregulate America, and it's going to actually restore so many freedoms to the American people. We actually have more freedom at the state and local levels than we do the national level, which is something that people don't realize. And in making this happen, it's going to give us our power back, because if we want a law on the books, you just go talk to your congressman. People don't realize how easy that is. Or if you don't want to make it at the national level, you just go to your city council. It makes life so much easier, so much freer, and it cuts those strings on us puppets, if you'll allow me that metaphor.
Yeah, thank you, Braden. I've always appreciate. That's one of the reasons I love student ministry, is that you are staying like in these conversations all the time, and I'm glad you guys have been able to see just a little bit of just what it's like to be in my office from time to time, actually, because we sit around, have lunch, and talk about this stuff, and and it's life-giving for me. I hope it is for everybody else. So I've gotten likes, I've gotten dislikes, I've gotten some hearts and loves, and I've had a lot of viewers today for this, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the comments today. Thank you for your interaction. I even like the dislikes. Isn't that amazing? Like, I really do, because it just brings traffic to our channels. I'm just joking. That's my sarcasm coming out. Be willing to disagree on this channel. Throw your comments up there, and we'll engage them charitably. And be willing to agree and encourage, too, because I think we need both of that sometimes. And as we go forward in this nation, I am, of course, optimistic right now, but at the same time, I know that the prayers don't need to stop. So if you would allow me, I'd like to lead us in a word of prayer before I close out today. And I would like to invite you to pray along with me. And I just want to thank you for sticking around and with the truth conversation. We're going to try to do one more of these tomorrow. I've still got to locate guests for the show and some sort of scope for it, because these are kind of like random, like, all right, let's do this. And I'm glad that Tim and Corey and Doug and my atheist friend Richard has all agreed to do this so far, and Jerry Walls today and Braden, and it's been really cool. But we'll see what happens tomorrow. We may or may not have a broadcast, but if we don't, if we do, check it out. If we don't, I'll see you next Tuesday. So in the meantime, let me pray us out today. Heavenly Father, we thank you for sending your Son, Jesus Christ, and Lord, we're thankful for all that you do for us. We thank you for your grace, for your peace that passes all understanding. Thank you for sending your Holy Spirit to us, Lord, to fill us with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. We thank you, Lord, for the just the grace that we don't deserve. And so I want to pray, Lord, for our country, for our current administration, for the Biden administration, as I already have been praying for almost 4 years now. We want to pray, Lord, that they would be able to look to you, the author and finisher of our faith, and that more people on the left would do that. They would look to you, Lord, as the answer, as the hope for our nation, and that they would continue, that honestly the confusion and craziness would cease in our country, the hatred would cease in our country, that we would see unity down the middle of the aisles, and that, Lord, that we would get things accomplished that truly would make this nation great. And I just know, Lord, that you're going to continue to help us, guide us, and direct us, Lord. Help us to speak truth in love, and help us to unite around the truth. We thank you, Lord Jesus, that you are good. You're more faithful than we are. Continue, Lord Jesus, to just be our hope. Be the one that we look to. Don't help us not to put our hope in leadership. Help us not to be overconfident or boisterous. Help us, Lord, to continue to look to you, as I've said already, the author and the finisher of our faith. It's in Jesus' precious and holy name that I pray. Amen. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being with me today. If you have any topics or anything you'd like me to cover this season, I'm still making my schedule. I'd love to hear from you. And you'll usually check us out on Tuesdays, but maybe we'll be doing more of these one-off things because people seem to enjoy them. So thankful for our audience. So thank you. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And let's keep the truth conversation going. God bless you guys, and we'll see you next time.